Today's Sports Spectrum interview was pre-recorded prior to the coronavirus outbreak.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I am Jason Romano. Our email address, jason@sportsspectrum.com. I'd love to hear from you, hear what you think about today's show, or any other ideas that you might have for Sports Spectrum. Again, my email address, jason@sportsspectrum.com. We are presented today by Water Mission, a nonprofit Christian engineering ministry that fights the global water crisis with safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions in developing countries and disaster areas. You can learn more about the great work they're doing by going to their website, watermission.org, fighting the global water crisis, watermission.org. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Check them out at compassion.com/team up, compassion.com/team up. Join a group of pro athletes that are coming together to help get kids sponsored and released from poverty. Again, the website, compassion.com/team up. Excited to welcome Darrell Stinson to Sports Spectrum, and today we have a conversation about second chances. And Daryl happens to be the founder of secondchanceathletes.com. He's also a pastor at Growth Ministries at Life Church in Duluth, Georgia, near Atlanta. He's an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, and most importantly, he's a suicide survivor. His goal? To erase depression, shatter addiction, and inspire people to unleash their uniqueness into the world. Daryl is a sold-out follower of Jesus Christ. He credits being able to come out of that suicide and depression state because of his faith. He was addicted to drugs. He sold drugs. He actually gave his life to Christ in the psych ward, and he tells a powerful story here today on the show. Take a listen to Darryl Stinson, founder of Second Chance Athletes, and he joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Darryl Stinson, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you, my friend. I'm so glad you reached out. Sometimes, we can't find every single guest that we have here on Sports Spectrum, and sometimes the guests reach out to us, and you did just that, and I was so glad that you did, because I'm reading your story, and I'm looking through, watching your TED Talk, and reading through secondchanceathletes.com, and I'm like, this guy's got a great story to tell, and he's doing some great work in the ministry for Christ. So tell us about, let's start there, I guess, secondchanceathletes.com. You're actually wearing the shirt. I can see it as we record this on Skype. Tell us about secondchanceathletes.com.
Man, Second Chance Athletes is really birthed because I recognized that I've shared my story at a lot of places, telling my story about surviving suicide and transitioning out of sports. And I noticed a lot of people were leaving inspired, but they weren't leaving transformed. They were all like, man, that meant a lot to me. I really appreciate that. I'm going through similar things. Wow. Some people were coming forth about their struggles with depression and mental illness and opioid addiction. But then it was like, well, what do we do next? And I'm like, well, good luck out there,
Right. Exactly.
And so we formed Second Chance Athletes because we wanted to create a holistic style of ministry to be able to help athletes discover identity and purpose beyond sports so that they can just live a fulfilled life and experience everything that God has for them. And so we do life coaching. We have a blog. We have some unique events that we do. And it's just a movement of former and forgotten athletes who know that this is important. And recently we've gotten into the preventative side of things where now we're doing transition preparedness in the school systems, helping to avoid the very crisis that many are into right now. So that's what Second Chance is all about. I believe that I was given a second chance to live because I survived suicide and want to give other people second chances to succeed at life without the demands of sports.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I think a lot of people listening might hear Second Chance Athletes and think about a player who got cut and released and then came back and had that second chance as an athlete. And those are great stories as well. But this is really even deeper. This is about a second chance at life, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's really just any some people are on their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth chance, but it's the fact that no matter where you're at in life, no matter how many mistakes you made, our God is a God of second chances, and second chances exist so that we can finish strong and glorify Christ. So that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Tell me your favorite, and if you can't name names, I understand, but your favorite sort of athlete second chance story that you've seen.
Oh, man, that's so hard. That's great. I mean, you ask great questions. I haven't been asked that before. My favorite second chance athlete story, other than mine, because I wouldn't be alive if I didn't have my own.
No, yours is a good one, too. We'll tell that in a second.
Here's one. Okay, so I remember when 2 years ago when we started, we were raising seed money to be able to help these athletes, because some of them, as you know, are bankrupt, divorced, don't have money. So we'll fund some initial services for them if they can't financially afford our services, our coaching. And so we were doing that, and we were interviewing a young lady who was a track star, was an All-American track athlete. And she said when she saw our story, our message, our content, and heard about our message, that she immediately started crying and breaking down because she knew something was off, but she just couldn't put her finger on it. She didn't know that that's what she was struggling with, was athletic transition. And while she was listening to one of our stories, it wasn't really like a podcast, just a video live, Facebook Live we were doing. She said her coworker came over and was like, put her hand on her shoulder, like, why are you crying? Is everything okay? And she said, listen to this. Well, why she started to show her coworker started crying because her husband was a former athlete who had been just struggling mentally, low self-esteem, just couldn't get his mojo back. And she was like, I think this is what my husband is facing. And so they were able to have to support one another in the middle of a workday because they tuned into a Facebook live stream we did. And we were able to connect with that athlete, talk her through our 5-step process to help you get over sports, discover purpose, and build your dreams. She's doing phenomenal now. And I haven't checked in on her coworker's husband, but my guess is if no news is good news. So just one of those stories that, like, man, you just never know the impact you can make. You just never know who's struggling with this thing around you. A lot of athletes and former athletes are good at being outwardly successful while being an inward failure. And I don't mean just morally. I just mean I don't have confidence in self. I have confidence in my athletic ability, but I don't necessarily like me or whatever. And so we can't let the external success, the accolades fool us. We got to care about the person over the talent. So that's what it's about.
That's really good. Darrell Stinson's our guest here on Sports Spectrum, founder of secondchanceathletes.com, and that's the website to check out, secondchanceathletes.com. All right, so in the introduction and you and I talking, you call yourself a suicide survivor. So can you share with us a little bit of your journey? I know you played college football at Central Michigan, and you came in, you were an athlete, and then things started to spiral down to the point of where you actually attempted to take your own life. Can you share with us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like many people who get into sports, you grow up wanting to be the next, Michael Jordan and rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. I almost said Kobe, but wow. No, yeah. But you grow up wanting to be like these guys. And for me, that's what it was. Sports, because I was a kid that wasn't, I was kind of awkward. Sports was the means that I didn't have to choose between being a black kid that talks and acts white. I didn't have to choose between the black crowd and the white crowd. Sports gave me that, where everyone would talk to me about my athletic success. So it became my identity. I didn't have faith in Christ. I grew up in church, but turned away from that because I just had some pastors who took advantage of me and hustled me for money. One went to prison for some stuff that he did wrong, and it just caused me to question that faith. And so sports was just my everything, man. And then I devoted my all to it. I did get that full ride scholarship to Central Michigan, and I remember had multiple coaches who had worked with former NFL athletes who told me, like, dude, it's not a matter of if you're going to go to the league. It's just a matter of when. You're 6'5", you're fast, and you're strong, and so, man, you're going to dominate this sport. And and that's what I believe. Well, unfortunately, I was squatting too much, trying to impress some seniors, and I ruptured a disc in my back my freshman year. And that should have ended my career. I had to have emergency back surgery, else my left leg was going to go paralyzed. And they told me that just focus on your education, get your surgery, and then you can come around football whenever you want. But for me, sports wasn't what I did. It was who I was, and it was the God that I served. And so I wasn't going to let it go that easy. So I signed a liability waiver to be able to keep my dream of playing in the NFL alive. And I put my body through 2 years of drug addiction to opioids, manipulating the healthcare system, getting multiple epidural shots in my back, manipulating the coaches and the administrators. Every time they would ask me if I was okay, I would just tell them yeah, and then I would just pop pills to get through practice. And I managed because I was talented enough to earn a starting position and make some plays, but everyone knew I just wasn't the same player anymore. Finally, going into my senior year, I was taking so many opioids that every time I made contact on the field, my nose would bleed. And the coaches and the athletic trainers saw that, and they were like, something's not right. We can't let you continue to do this. So they terminated my liability waiver and kicked me off the team before I hurt myself and became a risk to the organization. And that made me angry because I didn't know who I was outside of sports. I didn't think my life had meaning or purpose. I thought I was put on this earth to play sports. And when that was taken away from me, I didn't know what to do with my life. So I got depressed. And at the same time, I had a girlfriend who I was dating for 4.5 years who left me and got engaged for another man. So football's gone. This girl that I was dating, planning to marry, gone. And I basically just started to make attempts at suicide. I would mix pills and alcohol and get in the car driving, hoping to get in car accidents. I would swallow whole bottles of pills, hoping to never wake up again. And it was these attempts at suicide that landed me at a psychiatric unit in Detroit, Michigan. And it was there that my life changed forever.
What do you, when you say life, well, certainly your life is changing forever just in getting into a hospital, but I know where you're going with when you say your life changes forever. Walk us through the process of getting there, hopeless. I'm guessing you're at the, at the bottom of your life here. Just, they call it the rock bottom life part. And this God that you rejected and had this premonition on in the past because you were hurt suddenly becomes more real to you. So explain that, walk us through that.
Yeah, well, thankfully I had, my mom had talked me into coming to her house, and while she fell asleep, I had tried to get in the car and drive off and just go. My plan was to go run into an intersecting highway. And my mother threw herself on top of the car and said, please let me get you some help. And she convinced me, and I didn't want to drive with her on the hood of the car. And so she convinced me to go to that hospital in Detroit. So while I'm there, they're admitting me, getting ready to put me in this psych unit there. And there was a woman with green pants that came into my room. I call her the woman with green pants because at this point I had went from 275 pounds to 219 pounds in 4 weeks. I wasn't eating. I had been crying so much that my eyes were swollen shut that I couldn't see but just a little slit out the bottom of my eye. So all I could see is that she had on green pants. So she walks into my room. She wraps me in her arms and she says, I don't know who you are. I have no jurisdiction to be back here in this part of the hospital, but God sent me back here to tell you that you need to say yes to him.
Wow.
And I'm like,
yeah,
get away from me. I'm not religious. I don't want that God stuff. Like leave me alone. I just want to die. And I was screaming that over and over again. Just let me die. This woman prayed for me. My mother said for about 10, 15 minutes. It felt like 3. She left. She said she was going to come back. A few moments later, my grandmother, who was one of those church-going grandmothers who dragged you to church when you were younger, she came. She had driven from an hour and a half away from my hometown, Jackson, Michigan, where Tony Dungy's also from. Yep. She had driven to the hospital, and she said, she came in my hospital room. She said, baby, I've been praying for you all the way here. God told me that you know exactly what to do. You need to say yes to him. So it was the same command a second time, and I couldn't deny that it was God working through people to reach me. But my heart was still so hard. I didn't understand how saying yes and surrendering my life to Christ was going to heal my back and give me my girlfriend back and put me back on the track to be in the NFL. So I didn't want to say yes. To me, it wasn't going to change anything. So I sat there and I just told my grandma, leave me alone. That's for you. That's not for me. My grandma prayed for me for about 5 minutes. She backed away. And the best way I know how to describe it is that it was just dark, heavy, and silent. And I just heard the Father's voice whisper to me and say, "Son, will you say yes to me?" And it was something about hearing the Father's voice that gave me the strength to mutter out a "Yes, Lord." In the moment I said, "Yes, Lord," I promise you, the depression, the heaviness that I was under immediately vanished. My eyes that were swollen shut actually got healed. I could open them and see again. It felt so good. I just kept screaming over and over again, "Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord." So the doctor runs in and he opens up the door. He's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Man, I was running from God and I just surrendered my life to Christ." He said, "Okay, send him upstairs."
Right, you're on the deeper. You're going to the next unit. That's a great story, man. But
I knew that he was real, and that's the moment I began that personal relationship with God. And the crazy thing, you know how God works. I went to church as soon as I got out the psych unit, and the pastor was doing a series on marriage. But he said he felt led to share something differently that day. You know what he talked about?
Go ahead.
Depression, mental illness, and suicide prevention.
Yeah.
It was just for me. It was like God was just confirming that I'm real and I care about you even in your worst state. And man, I couldn't be more grateful for my relationship with Christ.
Daryl, that's an awesome story. I love that. And thank you for sharing it in such a transparent way. For those that are listening, and even for those that that might hear this in a different place, or maybe they're listening on the radio show right now or the podcast, or however they're listening to this interview, you know, there's people that are going to say, "Yeah, okay, you're using God as a crutch," or God, you know, God can do that for you, but he can't do that for me. And there's a real skepticism about faith right now, and people taking advantage of, not just people like what happened with you, but taking advantage of their own story to portray maybe a God that isn't, real for other people. How have you been able to see your story help others? And how long? I'm asking a couple questions, which you're never supposed to do when you're hosting a show. But let's ask this question first. How long did it take for your family, who saw you in this deep depression, in this terrible place, I guess, believe what had happened? Was it immediate? Did they see this conversion right away, or was this something that, naturally skeptics would be like, "All right, well, let's give it a 6-month thing here and see if this is real"? Can you walk us through that part?
Oh, yeah, man. Absolutely. So the good thing is that when that moment happened, in that psych room, my mom was there, my dad, my sister, my grandma. I think my mother-in-law might have been there. No, she wasn't there. My stepmom was there. Okay. And so they all seen it happen. They couldn't deny it, just like I couldn't deny it. And my grandma was already a strong believer. My mom was kind of. And the rest of my family, I think they kind of kept this close eye. I think they were kind of like, okay. But again, they didn't know how bad I was struggling either. I had it from them. The real skeptics were my friends, because not only was I addicted to drugs, I sold drugs. Yeah. And I sold drugs because I had to be able to pay for my medical expenses out of pocket. I don't know if you ever seen a hospital bill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it's not cheap. Now, the university covered my surgery, but all the rehab and the multiple epidural shots and the pain pills and the chiropractic appointments, I paid for all that stuff out of pocket. And so I developed this friendship circle all around my drug life. I sold drugs all throughout the state of Michigan. And so my life was crazy, man. And I talk about it in my TEDx talk a little bit, overcoming rejection. But they were the ones who were like, "Yeah, okay, we heard you say you're going to quit smoking before, and we'll see if you really do. Oh, okay. We see you hanging out at all the parties and selling drugs. So you're going to be back out there because the money's good, and God didn't really change your life." And so there's like this spectrum of people who 6 months later, when they really started to see, man, this guy's different. Not only is he not selling drugs and doing drugs, but there's a light in him that I can't really put my finger on. They can sense something's changed. I might look the same on the outside, but something had changed on the inside. And a really cool story real quick. There's a athlete who she plays in the WNBA.
Okay.
And we were friends. We did drugs together. We rolled dice together. And she actually almost caught a drug charge in college. And while I was working a job at Central Michigan University, she calls me in the middle of my workday. She says, "Hey, I know that I made fun of you for quitting drugs and everything, but I'm in a bad situation, and I want to know, how'd you do it?" This is at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And you know what I told her? It was Christ. And I was able to witness to her. And there was many others who I was able to witness to and, have them put their faith in Christ because they saw a tangible change in my life. So some were short term. Some took a little while. And, hey, transparently, there's still a few who are like, we still don't know what happened. You're just kind of religious now. And that's okay. That's okay. It takes time. One thing I know, and that I would encourage everyone who has those friends who are doubting, just keep living for God. And one day, God is going to have a way to awaken them to the reality of his love. His timing is different for them than it was for you. He's just as patient with them as he was with you. And he's got them. I had so much freedom when I learned that Christ desires to see all saved more than I do. That he loves my close family more than I love them. And knowing that I don't have to pray to convince him to get them saved because he already took care of that on the cross. He's at the right hand of the Father making intercession for us. Yeah. Knowing that gives me so much peace because if he's on the job, it's only a matter of time before they come to the reality that he's real and he loves them.
We'll get back to our conversation with Darryl Stinson in just a little bit, but want to tell you some more about our friends and partners at Water Mission, working to stop the global spread of COVID-19 by providing urgently needed safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions to refugee settlements and other vulnerable communities. The work that they do is so important. I mean, you talk about safe water and sanitation projects. They're building these projects. 5 million people who have been provided access to safe water since, this is as of February of 2020. More than 155,000 people provided access to adequate sanitation, something you and I probably take for granted just when we get up and go to the bathroom or get up and go get a glass of water from the sink. Millions of people across the world don't have that. And this is where Water Mission steps in. That's why their work is so important. That's why we believe in them. And certainly what they do is motivated by their faith in Jesus. And you can learn more about what they're doing through Water Mission's website, watermission.org, fighting the global water crisis. You can learn more. You can pray with them as well as they continue to look for opportunities to serve and reach those without proper water or sanitation. Check it out at watermission.org. We're also presented today by Compassion International. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And right now, there's a possibility that 70,000 children could be left without a sponsor because of COVID-19. And that 70,000 number is actually the capacity of an average NFL stadium. So as the world is in the grips of COVID-19, it's led to more sickness, parents can't work, food is scarce, and it's really a bad time for those children, especially those through Compassion International. See, normally these children would be sponsored through different events and concerts and things like that Compassion would be a part of. And that's not happening right now because of all the different cancellations with regards to the coronavirus. So Compassion is doing a pretty cool thing. They're teaming up with pro athletes to help fill the stadium and donating, getting your donations, our help, to keep these children sponsored. It's critical the next 12 months, every donation helping to fill a seat toward a year of needed funding for 70,000 children potentially without a sponsor. You can learn more by going to compassion.com/teamup, compassion.com/teamup, and you can join this team with a donation at any level to help fill a seat and save a child in need from poverty. Compassion.com/teamup and pray about helping a child and releasing them from poverty today. Now back to our conversation with Darryl Stinson here on Sports Spectrum. You haven't really gotten into the idea of when people hurt you and forgiveness. And I wrote a book on forgiveness, and it's a powerful topic for a lot of people, but a very hard topic for a lot of people. Tell me about that side of the TED Talk that you talk about when people hurt you and just entering into a place of understanding who God is and being able to forgive others.
Yeah. So it started by, and I shared this in the TED Talk, it was this perspective that God showed me. I couldn't say that on TED Talk, but that's what it was. Yeah. It's that rejection oftentimes is projection, a psychological projection of someone's own inward brokenness, feelings, insecurities. And so I share this story about me being a kid who hung around a lot of white people. And I found out one day I think it was the third grade, that I was known in our school as the black kid that talks and acts white. And that these kids were making fun of me, calling me an Oreo and all this stuff. And it caused me to feel feelings of rejection. And I actually changed the way that I talked, the way that I laughed, the way that I dressed in order to fit in with that crowd. All to their benefit, but really my resentment, because I knew that although they liked me because I changed to conform to be like them, that if I would have changed and been my authentic self, that they really wouldn't like me. And so it developed this kind of like, hey, I'm hanging around you, but I'm actually bitter and angry towards you because you only like me because I conform. You don't really like me for the authentic me. Well, once I, fast forward, went through all that stuff I went through and I got saved, God started to show me that those students were insecure, that they didn't know how to be their unique selves. They were afraid to do anything outside of what their peers thought was acceptable. I know a guy who was a great accountant. He would finish his homework great, but you know what he did? He turned and tried to be a rapper and sell drugs and stuff because that wasn't being an accountant wasn't something that was celebrated by that community. And so because they had all those inward brokenness and insecurities, they projected that onto me. And recognizing that hurt people is the perspective I needed to have empathy towards them rather than bitterness towards them. And so oftentimes when we get hurt or we feel rejected by others, we take that stuff so personally, not realizing that people are just projecting their own inward feelings about themselves. And if we had that perspective and allowed God to show that in others, it'd be a lot easier to forgive. And we'd have a lot more empathy towards others. Yeah. And so forgiveness is something, you've heard the quote that, forgiveness doesn't hurt anyone but you. They say it's like drinking poison, hoping that the other person would die.
That's it. Yeah.
And we have to give ourselves the gift of forgiveness. And we have to realize that oftentimes when people hurt others, it's just because they're hurt on the inside themselves. That's why Jesus could be on the cross and say, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah, I say that all the time, that beautiful depiction that Jesus is sitting on the cross, standing on the cross, being nailed to the cross, looking down at the people who put him there and offering forgiveness is it's the most beautiful picture of what the gospel is about. And it's hard for us to fathom that because you and I, Daryl, if we were put on a cross and we're looking at the people who did that to us, we're probably crying, screaming, pleading with them, take us down. We're not offering forgiveness. At least we don't think we would. Hopefully I would, because I'm trying to be Christ-like, but man, that's really hard to do. Darrell Stinson, this has been great, man. Let me ask you two more questions here.
Let's do it.
On the show. The first is Kobe Bryant, and that's been a topic. He passed away recently, obviously, in a horrific accident, and it really touched a ton of people around the world. It just hit everybody. And I think it opened up a lot of dialogue for people, especially in my circle, to talk about life being short and death and eternity and things like that. What was your reaction when you saw not only the news of Kobe, but just being able to have conversations, moving forward in the days and the weeks after his death, on eternity and the fact that life truly is short?
Oh my gosh. I was shocked when I heard the news. primarily because 2 days before that, I had a small group and we were talking about, if you can meet anybody, who would you meet and have a conversation with? And I was like, Kobe. And they were like, really? Why?
Wow.
And I was like, well, he's a girl dad. I'm a girl dad. He speaks 3 languages. He has successfully transitioned out of sports. And I'd love to interview him and talk to him about that and have him put his eyes on our framework to get his input and to see if he's went through similar phases and such. And then 2 days later, find out that happened.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was just talking about him. And it shocked me just like it shocked many others. And I actually had an opportunity playing a celebrity basketball game down in Miami for the Super Bowl. And with, there were celebrity athletes there. Isaiah Thomas was my coach. And when we did that moment of silence, that 24 seconds of silence for Kobe, with people who knew him on a personal level,
yeah,
it was heavy. It was deep. We were in tears. So it shocked us because it does remind us of the brevity of life. I have been fortunate to have survived suicide, and it's given me this unique appreciation for life because I feel like every day is a gift because I wasn't – sorry.
Okay. It's all right.
So – I've had a couple people pass away since I survived suicide. And at every funeral, I've been grateful that, I didn't have to face those feelings of regret where, I wish I would have called that person back or we should have talked more or whatever, because it's just when you are living on borrowed time, quote unquote, like you just appreciate it and you appreciate those little moments that people take for granted because you recognize that, I really tried not to be here. So I think it's important for us to love the people that are close to us. I think Kobe's life and everyone involved awakened us to that reality. I think Kobe and Gianna specifically, because of them being high profile, wealthy, quote unquote, untouchable,
right?
And to recognize that none of us are untouchable, and so we never know the day or the hour where our time will be up, and so let's make the most out of life. Love the people that are close to us. Let's not be so busy trying to perform and be rich and famous that we forget about the little small moments that matter and the people who care about us the most. So, yeah. Yeah,
I understand, man. No, it's hard to talk about, and that's not. I wasn't asking certainly to stem up any kind of emotions in certain areas, but I think there's just for me, there's been such an urgency, especially since Kobe's death, and I don't know why it was Kobe's death. It should have been that way, really, since I became a believer. But there's such an urgency for me now to tell people about Jesus, right? And there's such an urgency to tell others about this gospel, whether it's through this interview that we're doing, Daryl, or whether it's on my Facebook page or just in contact with people and trying to be more intentional about my faith and not force it on anyone, but just say, man, this is the biggest decision that you're ever going to make. And it's the most important decision because it's final. Once we're gone from this earth, that decision, that determination of where we go and spend eternity. So I don't know. It's just been really one that's been on my heart to be a little more urgent about my faith lately. As we close, Daryl, what's the great life lesson that you've learned in your walk with the Lord? This is a question we ask all of our guests, in terms of what are we learning from God right now? What are we learning from God today? But really for you, you've been through a lot these past 8 years, 9 years or so. What's the lesson that the Lord has shown you and taught you in your renewal of your faith and coming back to the Lord?
I'll give you one hot off the press. Gotcha. I was going to try to be poetic and profound and give you something that I know punches good.
That's all right.
But I think people can relate to failures more than successes. I think people can relate to what we're going through now versus all of our victories. So right now, currently in this season of my life, God has been reacquainting me with the new covenant gospel of his grace. Mm-hmm. I always understood the gospel. But somehow, over the course of time, in my walk as a believer, the gospel became the starting line and not the pool that I bathed in.
Okay.
What I mean by that is it became the thing where, hey, this is how you get saved. And then if you have, bad days, you don't pray, you don't read your Bible, you mouth off at somebody, you get angry at the kids, you get short tempered with the wife, then it's like, okay, there's grace there, there's forgiveness for that. Let's start again.
Yeah.
Rather than he's in me and he's with me and he's already taken care of that sin, and I don't have to come and start my prayer time with him reviewing all of my sins and failures and shortcomings and checking in, seeing how I'm doing. Mm. That I can actually delight in him.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I know that's kind of abstract, but I see it so much that somehow, man, because we're disciplined as athletes, and then when we become believers, we start to develop this law-based relationship with Christ, where it's not about grace and it becomes about the law. But Jesus fulfilled the law.
Yeah.
And we put these unnecessary burdens on ourselves. And I can't quote it exactly, but I read it on social media. Somebody said it, so I wish I had it in front of me. Probably can Google it. They said if you started a relationship with Christ and you are more bitter, jealous, burdened, depressed, you didn't find Christ, you found religion.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I've learned, is that somehow, I don't know how I started feeling guilty for not praying and down for, having, some struggles with my maturity in Christ or sin, quote unquote. But I'm just learning that the gospel isn't for the unsaved. It's for all of us. And
it's a daily denying of ourselves, taking up our cross and following him. Darryl Stinson, so good. Really, really good. Founder of secondchanceathletes.com. Go to the website there. Go to YouTube. Check out the TED Talk. Doing great work for the kingdom. Really appreciate your story, my friend, and your transparency. Thanks for joining us here on Sports Spectrum.
Thank you for having me. Love what you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
And many thanks to Darryl Stinson. Again, the website, secondchanceathletes.com. You can check it out. You can also watch his TED Talk right there on YouTube, Overcoming Rejection. And he's doing some great work, and a suicide survivor. And man, my heart breaks for people who struggle with mental illness, and certainly those who have attempted suicide and those who have, lost their lives to suicide. That just breaks my heart. And I'm so glad that Daryl survived, and that he's using his platform now to help others and to serve others. So really appreciate his transparency today on Sports Spectrum. Thanks to Daryl. Thanks to you for listening as well. We really do appreciate it. I mean, seriously, when I say this, when you click that play button, that means more to us than you can imagine, because it means you've invested time into the content that we're creating. And we're spending a lot of time creating that content here at Sports Spectrum, but it's nice to know that you're actually investing in what we're doing. And so we appreciate it. We'd love to hear from you. My email address, jason@sportspectrum.com, and you can email me directly. Let me know what you heard, what you thought from Daryl and his interview, or if you have any ideas about other guests that we should talk to. Maybe you heard a previous podcast. I mean, there's over 500 interviews that we've done that you can go back and listen to. We'd love to hear from you. Jason@sportspectrum.com. And you can follow us on our social media pages and comment and reach out to us there as well. Our DMs are open on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel as well where all of our podcasts are. So there's no shortage of ways to connect with us, and definitely give us a follow on social media. We would love to hear from you. And again, thank you for investing into Sports Spectrum. We really do appreciate it. We also appreciate our sponsors and partners, Water Mission and Compassion. Check them out on their websites, watermission.org and compassion.com/teamup. They're unbelievable organizations that are just awesome and doing great work, and we're so privileged to have them as partners. Water Mission and Compassion, thanks to them as well. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We love you guys. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and please do stay safe.